So someone on TikTok asked, how far would Shanks get in the Bleachverse? Now, of course, me being a fan of both Bleach and One Piece, I decided to give my opinion on this conversation. And spoiler warning for the One Piece fans, this doesn't go remotely the way that you think it would. I'm sorry that you have to hear it from me, but Shanks is not really doing much of anything in the Bleachverse. The Bleachverse scales way too high for Shanks to even be able to do anything remotely relevant to any of the important characters. We already know for Bleach, the scaling in the Bleachverse is absolutely insane, with the top tiers in the Bleachverse being able to affect multiple separate realms on multiple occasions, being called and displayed to be different realms. These are not just planets like Earth, Saturn, Jupiter. No, these are entire universes as it's been displayed in the Bleachverse. And the top tiers in the Bleachverse, like the Soul King, like Ichigo, like Yuha, even the Royal Guard, are able to affect multiple universes. It was stated in Thousand Year Blood War, for example, that the Royal Guards, just by releasing their Bankais, almost threatened to destroy all of the verses in Bleach, which is why all of the other Royal Guards had to off themselves when one of them revealed their Bankai. So right off the bat, we know that Shanks is not coming remotely close to the Royal Guard, to Yuha, to Ichigo, or to anybody who scales in that ballpark. Next, we can take it one peg down. What about the Gotai 13? Again, we have the top tiers in the Gotai being able to affect all of Soul Society, like Yamamoto for example. Just by releasing his Bankai, evaporated all the air and all of the water in Soul Society. Just by releasing his Bankai, not even using it yet. Now, of course, it would be asinine to suggest that all of the Gotai are relative to Yamamoto in strength, because they're not. But if the strongest member of the Gotai is able to affect an entire realm, it is not ridiculous to say that even the weakest in the Gotai would have somewhat of an equivalent measure of strength. Even if it's something like affecting maybe half a realm, that is still infinitely stronger than anything Shanks has been able to show to be able to do. And the final nail in the coffin is when you consider that the Vizards, for example, who in the grand scheme of Bleach are considered to be pretty weak, are still captain level. It's the same thing when you look at Yuha's Stern Raiders, and it is the same thing when you look at Aizen's Arrancar. So if Shanks wouldn't be a top tier in Bleach, he probably wouldn't be a mid tier in Bleach. Where in the world would Shanks even rank in the world of Bleach? I'm glad you asked that, because I have an answer. First of all, we can look at the feats that Shanks has performed and ask ourselves, where have we seen an equivalent type of feat, and what kind of character would we say that he'd be equivalent to? Well, his first major feat is when he clashed with Whitebeard, who is the strongest character in the One Piece verse, stated to be the strongest man alive. He was able to split the clouds in the sky. Now, of course, this is somewhat of an impressive feat, but again, in the world of Bleach, these feats are really not all that impressive. We're talking about characters who can affect universes, so splitting the sky directly above you is not that important. Especially when we saw Ichigo, just by swinging his sword, was able to clear out the entire sky when he was fighting against Kinjo. His next feat would be him blocking a punch from Akainu. Now this again is kind of hard to say because he didn't fight Akainu, he just blocked a punch from Akainu. And it's also important to consider that this is Akainu after he had gotten absolutely pulverized by Whitebeard, the strongest character in the verse. So Shanks being able to block Akainu after fighting Whitebeard really downgrades the feat from being something crazy impressive to being not that impressive, right? Like think about it realistically. If I block a punch from Conor McGregor after he got his ass handed to him by Khabib, that is not that impressive. And the other only real feat that I can think of is him being able to one-shot Captain Kidd. But again, in the context of that fight, it was a complete off-guard feat. Captain Kidd was not expecting Shanks to even be able to see what he was going to do. Because if you remember that scene, Captain Kidd was going to attack Shanks. Shanks used his future sight to see that Captain Kidd was about to attack him and basically off-guarded him. So all we really have for Shanks is the statements and then his reputation within the One Piece verse. But again, if we're going off of the strength of characters and we're not ranking them based off of their reputation, again, Shanks is just not that impressive. In the One Piece verse, where most of the characters are normal humans with no powers, of course Shanks is going to seem crazy levels of impressive. But when it comes to the Bleach verse, I just don't see how he's keeping up. Well, what about when Shanks used his Conqueror's Haki against Green Bull and basically paralyzed him and made him unable to attack the Straw Hats? Even if we give him that ability, like the best I can see Shanks doing is maybe being able to damage a low tier hollow, maybe even a mid tier hollow, like those hollows that Ichigo was fighting in the beginning of the series. And strength wise, I would probably put him at like beginning of the series Chad, because again, even though people always meme and joke on Chad has superhuman levels of strength and has displayed superhuman levels of strength, like seeing a beam fall on his back and him being able to brush that off with pretty much no damage. So the long and short of it is that these cross-verse battles don't really make much sense when you're comparing them to verses who are completely out of each other's ballpark. Is Shanks powerful in the One Piece verse? Absolutely. But when you bring Shanks into the Bleach verse, I just don't really see him maintaining that same level of strength and reputation when it comes to characters who are able to casually influence entire multiverses. But of course, I would like to see everybody else's perspective on this issue. So as always, make sure you let me know how y'all feel about this in the comment section down below, and let me know what y'all want me to talk about next. Andy Mangaka, signing off.